Hello, everybody. This is Scale App Podcast. Actually, this is the 29th episode. 29 episodes of really interesting founders of companies that are scaling up. This is, of course, Scale App Podcast, as you all know. And this is beyond startup, not for startups. Of course, startups can listen and should listen because this is a podcast that shows the way to going beyond the early uncertain stages of finding product market fit and really scaling a company. And we've had companies from all over the world. Well, I have here with me, and this is a really special pleasure, of one of my good friends, Jorge Rodriguez. Jorge, say hello.
How are you? Hi, Dan, or hi to everyone that listens to you.
So you see me, but you don't see all the hundreds and maybe thousands of listeners who are tuning in to this podcast. I've known Jorge for maybe 20 years now, and it all started when I went to Puerto Rico as an excuse to dance salsa there. I decided I would write a case on a Puerto Rican company, and I ran into Jorge, who was building a company called Paciv, and I thought it would be really interesting, and I wrote a case. I taught it in my Harvard class. I've probably taught the case 20 or 25 times. Each time Jorge himself came to class. And it was really a winning case. So so today we're going to meet with Jorge and we're going to talk about the process of building and scaling and the ups and downs of his company, which he sold a couple of years ago. The company is called Paciv, Paciv. And he built it from Puerto Rico. It's a global company, but built from Puerto Rico. So, Jorge, let's start off, if it's okay with you. Don't say anything about Paciv. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, Jorge, as a human being.
Well, I think it's important maybe for what we talk later. I'm a son of one of five of immigrant parents that moved to Puerto Rico from Spain, looking obviously for a better life. So we were raised, they came with nothing, just to work hard. And typical immigrant parents, I heard this so many times now, to me it's very typical. You had to study to get your way out. You had to get educated, study. They don't know anyone. They have no connections. So the only way, and the second part, which is also what I hear a lot from people now, there were only like four things you could study, either medicine or engineering or accounting, or the other one was architecture, I believe. It was four because they saw there had to be something that had like a license or a recognition,
Profession.
a profession, that you didn't have to have a connection to get a job.
But your father had a business, and you grew up in a little business. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my father, obviously now I understand more about entrepreneurship. I look back, I said, wow, he was a blazer. He left Spain to go to Cuba at 14 years old, paid his well up through school. Then Fidel came in, he left, went back to Spain, married my mom, and came back to Puerto Rico, and he started selling clothing. So he will buy the fabrics in the textile in New York. He didn't know any English, by the way, so don't ask me how he got through that. He will buy the textile, bring it back to Puerto Rico, do clothing, guayaberas, and local type of clothing.
That's a special kind of shirt. The guayabera is a very special Puerto Rican shirt.
Right. And then he will sell it. He will sell it to stores, but it's now, and he will tell us this, and now I know he was teaching me working capital, but basically he will give the merchandise to the stores, and he will get paid after they sold it. And then when he got paid, he will pay the first persons to get paid were the suppliers. And then whatever was left, it was to buy food, milk for us. So, and he will tell us, I need to keep the machine running. So to keep the machine running, I need to keep giving merchandise to the sellers, and so I can pay the manufacturers.
So what did you learn from that experience as a kid, being involved in your father's shirt business?
I guess the most important for me was there were a few work ethics. Like he will be very committed to his word of what he told people. Uh, Huge levels of integrity and loyalty. I mean, it was all, there was no computer, so it was all like notebooks and notes. And this one owes me this. I owe this one this. And no contracts and legal stuff like that. And work integrity, and also like sticking to your word. And I remember he always paid the suppliers first, even than putting food in our fridge. So I always paid my suppliers even before the 30 days that they gave me. At the beginning, I didn't get any credit, and they start giving me credits that were unbelievable because I was paying. The word got out that I was a very good payer just because I paid, you know, very fast. I hate owing anyone, and it was kind of he was very clean running his business, very very clean.
So
Uh,
as I remember, Jorge, also your upbringing was very strict. You had swimming, you had to do your lessons. Your mother was really
that's the other component. They were very Catholic. The five kids, immigrants. They had no money for helpers or anything, so it was all my mom and him. So he was working. He worked. The office was at home, so that also impacted us a lot because I saw my dad working all the time in the small warehouse he had on a corner of the house. So the structure was critical to get us on time to things and get things in order. So everyone ate at the same time. If you wanted to repeat, if there was any food, it was by age order. So the oldest, if you didn't want to take another turn, then the next one and the next one. So everything was very strict, and very disciplinarian. No BS, no nonsense stuff. It was, I think, the only way to have five kids with very limited resources and getting results.
So let's fast forward. You went to Syracuse University. That was a culture shock, but you made it through Syracuse University. Education was really important. You came back and you worked in the pharmaceutical industry. Tell us a little bit about that and how that led to you creating Paciv.
Yeah, so obviously when I came back from Syracuse, spent 3 years in the States moving through development program. I came back to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is huge in pharmaceuticals. One of the largest, in the world in jurisdictions, with the concentration of pharmaceuticals. So when I came back, I studied in electrical engineering. I studied control systems. So my concentration was in automation, what we call control systems, industrial control systems. I got my license in that, and I started working with Eli Lilly. Worked there, and then I was
But you were an employee. You were an employee of.
I worked here Eli Lilly as a control system engineer. And then I wanted to do a master's in engineering, but there were no schools in San Juan that offer masters in engineering, and I couldn't. I had to stay working. So Lilly will pay my master's. So I did a master's in business. Not that I care about business, but I was bored to death going back home with mom and dad after working. All my brothers had gotten married, so I was the one helping mom and dad as they were getting older, and got my MBA, and that light bulb came up. I went to J&J, Johnson & Johnson, because I thought I wanted to be a manager within the pharmaceuticals, but then that was boring as hell. So through the MBA, I realized I can actually do this from the outside and be a supplier.
And they actually encouraged you, if I remember correctly. They kind of encouraged you to go out, but to come back as an independent supplier. But you were kind of an accidental entrepreneur. You didn't have any concept in those days of building a company. You were just
Totally.
This is a professional. You're a professional.
It was pure coincidence, and actually my mom and dad were not like happy at all. But I went for J&J after graduated, kept all my friends of Eli Lilly, and I moved to J&J, and after 2 months being a manager, I said, I don't like this at all. I like the field, the technical part. So telling Lilly, my friends at Eli Lilly, that I didn't like what I was doing, the bosses there told me, why don't you start your own thing and we'll contract you to do projects? And that's when I say, okay, so maybe, so basically I left J&J, all never burn a bridge, gave them all the time they needed, opened the company registered the company while I was working there. And basically I finished on a Friday and I signed my contract on a Monday and I start working on a Monday. So, basically don't let go of something until you have something else secure. But they kind of gave me a good holding environment for my leap of faith. Uh, Even with that, my mom and dad said I was crazy, but I felt it was gonna be maybe a high probability of a non-failure by doing it that way.
But also in Puerto Rico, this is not typical, right? This was being a sort of independent, selling services to the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world.
Yeah. This is very I mean, the suppliers were usually also U.S. companies. In Puerto Rico, you graduate students and people graduated to work for these big pharmaceuticals. But it doesn't have I mean, I did my MBA I graduated in 1996. And for 3 years in the University of Puerto Rico in the MBA, I never heard the word entrepreneurship. So the mindset is about educating you to become a professional and have a salary, and not like now that everyone talks about it. It didn't. There was no ecosystem at all.
So you were working like 80, 90 hours a week as an individual, but at some point you said, wait a second, I can build a company. What was that?
Well, yeah, I always, obviously, I went home. I said, I still have more runway to go. Maybe I start this and see I never thought it was going to be as big as it turned out. But I thought that it could work, the fact of giving the service from the outside, very tailored, especially because I was combining 3 services into one place to get a solution to the client, kind of turnkey. I thought that being myself a client of what I was going to be now a provider, I thought it definitely could be a very attractive to the client, which ended up being that way.
So at some point you said, wait a second, Jorge, I'm working all by myself as an engineer, building these process controls. And wait a second, I don't have to do this all by myself. What was that moment like?
Well, basically, the clients, again, spoon feed me. They're like, okay, we have a larger project. I had the technical competency and the commitment to work. I said, we have a larger project, but you cannot do it alone. If you get a few engineers more, we'll give it to you. So that's literally how it happened. I hired some contractors that were like, hired guns within the pharmaceutical. The clients knew who they were and they were okay with that. So I hired them as regular employees, got them health plans, 401ks. So, I got 3, 4, in my first 6 months, I already had 2 more engineers. So it was 3 of us. And it was good because, you start practicing the administration systems, the payroll, the taxes, the benefits, the employment manual starts getting, practiced. And it worked. The growth was, and then the next year they gave me more. Remember, automation was very niche and a huge need by the client. So if you did a good job and deliver on your promise, I was an insider. They have huge barriers of entry too, and I was already an insider, so that helped. And they kept giving me more contracts. My first 2 clients were Eli Lilly and Johnson & Johnson, which is where I used to be an employee.
Now, at some point you find yourself providing these services in the United States, sometimes Ireland, Singapore, the UK, Italy, and other places. Draw the line from, okay, you have a couple of clients in Puerto Rico to being a global company with over 100 employees. That's quite a transition, right?
That was probably the only thing I had in my vision very clearly since day 0. And it was because Eli Lilly, all these companies had more than one plant in Puerto Rico and in different counties, in different municipalities. So when I was an employee, I already knew that when you did something in one, they wanted you to do the same thing in the others. They have the same standards, the same practices, but they don't have the flexibility and the agility to do it themselves because you're an employee of one of the sites. So one of my visions is, okay, if this pain is happening here, I'm sure this is happening somewhere else. That's when the immigrant thing is in, because I have been traveling to Spain and kind of seeing the world since very little. So I knew there was a world there with all these plans that these clients had. And they had, remember, email did not exist. So, the worldwide net wasn't there like now. But I knew the pain was very similar. And exactly so, when I did my first few projects in Eli Lilly, immediately they told me, can you go to Indianapolis? Can you go to Ireland and provide the same service? So I will have my floppy disk with the programming, go there. So basically, my clients in Puerto Rico were literally the ones that took me to those other sites of them in other parts of the world.
So just to be clear, this is you're doing computer software validation services, and this was important because drug manufacturing is highly, highly regulated, and the process in Puerto Rico has to be identical to the process in Indiana and exactly the process in Singapore and the UK and Ireland and so on and so forth. So if you learn how to make that process well, then you have to do it exactly the same somewhere else. And so you know how to do that. So there's
Exactly. You got that right. There is a huge incentive by the client to get consistency of interpretation, they call it, on the implementation of a system. So if the FDA inspects them in Ireland and in Puerto Rico, it's the same system, sort of, they want to see the same compliance and the same approach. So if they use the same vendor, they increase that compliance trustworthiness. So I knew that also. So obviously, if I'm willing to travel and I'm willing to provide the services around the world, they'll probably go for it. And obviously, it's going to be a bit even cheaper and more insurance that is going to be finished on time. But they're willing to pay whatever is needed because they already know that you know how to do it.
So let's talk a little bit, Jorge, about how you built your customer relations and what you call customer intimacy on the one hand, and on the other hand, the special culture that you build inside of Paciv that is so critical to your success.
Yeah. So to me, providing a specialized services, especially with a client like that, we're talking very, very wealthy clients willing to pay high, but very, very demanding. I think the three key components were technical competency. You have to know technically how to do the work. The commitment culture. These are manufacturing plants running 24/7, and they have to get their product out the door and with the quality and consistency needed. And also a trusted brand. They are regulated. Probably their brand is worth more than the product. So they need to make sure that the suppliers they're having are suppliers that are very reliable and trustworthy. So to me, those three components feed off customer intimacy. The more you improve in that, the more the client is going to intimate with you. So I was able to really dedicate. I knew 24/7. I will be in Puerto Rico and they will come in from Ireland. I said, I need to see you by tomorrow, and I'm on a plane that night heading to Ireland. So that kind of commitment. I mean, everyone's mobile phone is on the business card. Everyone's passport is up to date. That willingness gets you the master service agreements, what I call. So very early, I understood that if I was willing to make that dedication to a client like that, they will put you in a particular level, and then the globalization came in, and these procurement groups became more globalized, more corporate, and because of that, we became like master service agreement of many of these pharmaceuticals.
And serving their multiple facilities for the same company, they'd have to have the exact copy in Singapore and Ireland and other places.
And when you're an MSA, they call it master service agreement. They call it MSA. When you're an MSA supplier, you are in another league. Even at the local level, they see you like a supplier that, in intimacy wise, you're very. They share with you their capital plan. They share with you where they're going. Obviously, you need to share how many people you're going to be getting them for this, for that. What are your rates? What is the discounts they're getting for volume? All that. But it's a whole different. It's a partnership model. It's not like a bidding process. It's more of a partnership.
That trust has to be earned. And to say a little bit about transparency, because I think it's fair to say that your transparency is radical.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, these are huge. I mean, come on, now Eli Lilly is the biggest pharmaceutical in the world, but these companies are huge, tremendously big. And I'm a little guy. So at the beginning, they will hand me projects, but they will be very concerned. And the way I run my business, I will take all the cash flow, the excess cash every year, and I will put it on a separate account that I had for investment so I can make some money out of it. So if you look at my balance sheet and if you look at my P&L, there wouldn't be that much debt on my financials. So to keep these MSAs, and you need to show that you have some debt financially. I never had a loan. I always financed myself with the money that I had on my investment accounts. So what I used to do when they will qualify me, I will send them all my income tax returns and my personal accounts where I kept all the investments. I said, hey,
That's crazy.
and they will say, no, you don't need to do that. But I said, no, I want you to make sure that the money is not like I'm not buying boats or second homes. The money is not under this name, but it's under these just because of it's a strategy to self-finance myself. But I think in a way they see that when you go out of that way, that you're very dedicated to make sure things go well, and they pay you back with their trust when you do that.
So how did you drive that customer intimacy into your organization at Paciv?
I think you need to model it. I was billable the first 13 years of my tenure at Paciv. The first 13 years, I was billable 100%. I mean, literally 100%. So when I opened the office in the US, I moved there. I was working in projects and opening the office. When I opened the office in England, I moved there. I opened an office and I was billable. So when I'm saying billable, I'm at the site working in projects, and I'm billing the customer as well as the other employees.
And you're with a hard hat and safety shoes.
Safety shoes and programming and going to the meetings. And I think at the engineering level, these are engineers. So and obviously these are highly technical services. So they also respect the fact that you're teaching them and opening the knowledge so they can learn, and they see you behave with the client. They see how the client treats you, and they get they get it. They say, okay, this is the way this works. And obviously, if someone steps out the line, my clients were so intimate with us, they will call me immediately. They said, I don't think this guy is going to work. So, that's the way the culture gets built. And even the employees will actually say, if someone comes in and say, this is the way this works here. Uh, Obviously, you compensate all that with different mechanisms. But remember, the services we provide, like 90% of it is on site. It's on the client's place. So you're there with the client working on the solution, and the client is making change orders as you're doing the work. They're embedded with you as you complete the solution for them.
And so you built a culture inside of Paciv that was special in a way that created a commitment of the employees to the customer.
Yeah. And a key point that I mentioned is I had the same benefits, salary, compensation structure, and a bit more than the client. So all regular employees, they get bonuses by their projects. They get all the benefits, birthday off, a lot of benefits, flexible time, a lot of benefits that are the client provides that are usually not affordable by small companies. I did all that. So I gave them all my commitment with my effort, by modeling, and also the way we handle the employment structure, expecting them to give us then their best.
Mhm. So let's fast forward. You ended up selling Paciv a few years ago, I think 3, 4 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, why did you sell?
I knew that basically what is happening in the industry is still of the services we provide, industrial automations, process automation is still very fragmented, hugely fragmented. So the companies are still owned by the founders, most of them, and they're all regionally based, and they're also by vertical. So if you do pharmaceuticals, you probably don't do water, wastewater, you probably don't do food and beverage and oil and gas. They're all by industry. I knew at some point it was going to get the attention of the people of the private equity and VCs. And so on, it was going to start putting them together, especially when your client is so big. And the projects, I mean, it's funny. Lilly is going to do a project in Puerto Rico of 1.2 billion. They're doing a project in Houston of 5 billion. That's in my times, that never happened. So I knew that it needed to grow to continue to assist because someone else is going to grow if it's not us. And the way to grow, it cannot be organic anymore. It needs to be by acquiring other players, hopefully in the same vertical, maybe the same type of client, but in different regions or same regions just to grow. And I needed the cash for that. I needed someone. So that's why we did a finance, sell to a private equity group. Right now, they bought 5 more companies. And, we are located now in Texas, in Houston. We're located in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, in addition to Rhode Island and Indianapolis. So I think is the only way that if you stop growing, you start dying. That's the way I see it. And the next layer for us was to move to that middle level of maybe 350 engineers, 400 engineers that could attend to these clients in their different regions and expansions.
We're talking a company that's, let's say, between 10 and $20 million of revenues. Jorge, one more aspect of your development that so far we haven't touched on, and that is your avid desire to learn that brought you to various institutions around the world to develop yourself as a manager, as a leader. Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's to me very important. I think as an engineer, I guess as a nerd, I'm a big fan of knowledge, you know, of people in academia like yourself that put their brains to work to understand things and being able to then be processed by the people that are executing that knowledge on the day to day. So after I finished engineering, I didn't know about business at all, anything, but I had by chance I went to study it, and then I learned about marketing and about things that I didn't know anything about. And then because of the MBA is the only reason Paciv existed. So then when I was doing the Paciv, I already had like 110 engineers, and I was selling like 10 million or 9 million, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was like lost. So I went back to school. I went to Harvard Business School to do the owner's president management program. That was from 2005 to 2007 to 2009. Because MBA, business knowledge changes as professors like you keep studying. And that changed that was my real scale up. I was running like a mom and pop thing. I basically didn't have like a website. I didn't have business salespeople or anything. So I went there, changed my whole perspective on business, went back. That's when I opened my offices in Europe. I expanded my offices in the US. And then I understood customer intimacy, the competitive advantage that I was working on. Everything that I have discussed with you, I learned through that process. Uh, so I was able to grow in a very orderly and reasonable manner that gave a lot of coherence, operational coherence to that growth, and the client notices that. So that was until I stopped until 2017 when I gave the presidency to Rick, my partner in the U.S. But it was very significant, the impact that that knowledge had. And then I went back to school for the new thing I'm doing because I opened a free market think tank, and I didn't know what free market meant, and I didn't know what think tank meant. I had to Google it. But I wanted to understand that. I didn't know anything about economics or government or public policy, social change. So I went back to a fellowship at Harvard to go and take classes on all these areas that had nothing to do with business. Because when as an engineer, you think before you do something, you need to learn how it gets done, right? So that's kind of how my mind thinks.
Right, you're talking about the Advanced Leadership Institute. Well, we're going to have to end in just a couple of minutes, but Jorge, I want to ask you one more question, and that is, if you were to meet your younger self, you're now in your 50s, if you were to meet your 25-year-old self, and your 25-year-old self is saying, I want to start a company and build a company, what advice would you give your younger self now, knowing what you know today?
Or take more risk. I guess the way I was raised by my parents are how conservative they were. I didn't take enough risk. I think I was riding a Ferrari for 10 years on my first or second gear, after what I've learned about business. I didn't take enough risk as I think I should.
Give me an example of the risk that you would advise yourself to take.
Well, maybe borrow some money to grow faster. Maybe buy someone that maybe was selling or was small or wanted to get out, and but I didn't know how business worked at that level of growing, so I was all organic. They give me the project, then I hire. I wasn't that aggressive.
It's amazing, Jorge. I think at least 50% of the people I asked that question of on this podcast say exactly the same thing. They say, take more risk, do it sooner rather than later. Don't wait till everything's perfect. And I'm a little bit surprised, but I think that's a very interesting consistency that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Well, look, we have to end. I promise everyone this is a relatively short podcast that people can listen to on their way to the supermarket and finish by the time they've checked out. So we're going to end right there. And I want to say, Jorge, thank you very much. It's been great to see you again. Of course, it's been a long time. You're a great friend, and it's been quite a journey. We've known each other now for 20 years, I think, and met, I think, dozens and dozens of times and shared a lot of experiences. So it's great to see you.
Same things.
So thanks a lot, Jorge, and thanks for sharing with everybody. You're very generous in that respect of sharing your wisdom and your experience quite openly with everyone. So thank you very much. So everyone, this is Scale Up Podcast. We're signing off. If you like it, share this. This is a unique reservoir of know-how of how you grow companies way beyond the startup phase. So if you share it with your friends, and I look forward to hearing with you and listening with you in subsequent episodes. So again, thanks, Jorge, for sharing.